Yeah. Well, hey, Devon Howard, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
This morning, you and I were in a tizzy, worried about our buddy Chaz Smith.
Yeah. What? So he'd gone missing. I
Chaz
grew a
has
little
gone missing.
concerned.
I literally called Devon. I'm like, dude, I've got a problem. Like, I'm very concerned about Chaz. Chaz, despite his outward persona, he is super reliable, incredibly dependable. We've been doing this show together for 4 or 5 years, and he's never once not replied. I mean, even if we've missed a show, it was discussed in advance and there was a reason why. This week, he has gone radio silent, not replying to text messages, calls, nothing. So I was actually concerned. And ultimately, I got a hold of his wife. I called Devon to discuss it with Devon earlier today, but after that, I got a hold of Chaz's wife, and she's like, "Oh no, he went sailing. He's out of range. We had pandemonium in the house earlier in the week, and so he probably just didn't finish buttoning up all of his obligations for the rest of the week. But he's on a sailboat, out of range. That's why you've." She's like, "I'm presuming he's okay. I don't actually know for a fact that he's okay, but I'm presuming he's scheduled to be back late tonight, and you'll probably hear from him then." So
Yeah. So he's out there sailing somewhere. And speaking of buttoning up, is he wearing a polo? Have you guys discussed? Does he have like a sailor's outfit? Like, is he a boat shoes, no socks guy? Ralph Lauren shorts? Like, what is he wearing out there?
this is what inquiring minds want to know. He is very opinionated about fashion, so you're absolutely right. There's got to be an outfit that's like designated for his sailing days.
Or Nautica? Like, I don't know. What's something that somehow would be offensive to him, but maybe he's secretly wearing it?
I mean, I think Nautica is it. You nailed it with the brands that you mentioned because I don't think he'd be caught dead in those, but he does have a version that looks exactly the same that just costs 5 times more for some reason.
Oh, well, thank you for calling me. I can't sit in for him. So is that you giving this a different title, this particular episode?
Yeah. Not that Chaz is as gritty as he once was, but that show is still called The Grit. So today's show is Sanskrit with Devon Howard. It's the opposite of The Grit.
Oh no. Hey, do you remember was it a few years ago when we started that Make Chaz Grid Again campaign?
Yeah.
I think we try to get hats going.
I
Did
have
that
hats in my
go anywhere?
garage right now.
Okay. Did he get grit again? Where is on the grit level? Where is he at currently?
I didn't realize it. When you see your kid every day, you don't realize how they're growing up. And then you look at a photo from 6 months ago and you're like, wow, they look wildly different.
Hmm.
Same thing happened with his grittiness. We had all this accepted the fact that he was not grit anymore. And then over the course of I don't know, the last 6 months, I got a couple emails and they're like, man, Chaz is on fire. He really doesn't like Eric Logan, or he really doesn't like the WSL. I think those are the main two things he was getting fired up about. And I'm like, wow, unexpectedly, it was organic. It happened very organically, but he has gotten his grip back for sure.
Okay, good. All
I
right.
know.
And I know you guys have threatened at times to be positive, and you always give it the old try, and then it just sort of slowly back goes backwards.
I
Like, we're
know.
trying to be positive.
I hate to even put it in those terms. You're right. We do use those terms, but I like to think of the show as being irreverent. You
Okay.
know what I mean? Like it's not actually negative. It's just irreverent and poking fun. And I think if we're not on our A game, it ends up becoming negative. But there is a way to be irreverent and funny and critical while not being negative. Being
Yeah.
insightful maybe.
Yeah.
So it's what the surfing world needs. It's what surfing is irreverent.
It is. So what are we diving
Um,
into today?
Well, so one of the PSAs I love to do for our listeners, I do it specifically for Chaz, uh, but our listeners I think benefit from it too. And it is a PSA around important holidays to let people know, hey, Valentine's Day is coming up. I know you normally don't think of it until 3 days prior, and then you're scrambling to figure out what to get for your significant other.
Mm,
Well, Mother's Day is on the horizon. Mother's Day, from the time people listen to this, is about 1 week away. And so I feel like you are a very thoughtful son. You're probably a thoughtful husband to your wife, who is now a mother. And so I wanted to glean insights from you, Devon Howard, on what should people do to look like they were thoughtful, even though we're the ones who planted the seed, look like they were thoughtful for the mothers and loved ones in their life for Mother's Day. Do you have gifts in mind that you're doing? Do you have a special day planned? What's going on?
Um, okay, so where do we start? Are we starting with mom, or are those of us that have a wife that is also a mother? Where do
You
we
pick.
start?
I think we start with mom. Let's start with
Because
mom.
yeah, because I think they're different, and I've actually chatted with Britt, who's a coworker here, obviously, about this, and they're very different, right? So moms, um, moms, it's easy to for me at least to fall into some of the classics. Um, the flowers thing. Um, Flowers, not so much chocolate, but flowers in a really thoughtful card. And when you do the flowers, go the extra mile and get a really nice vase. Not just like here's the bouquet, but I think when you plunk down some cash for that, beautiful, perhaps artistic or classic looking vase, whatever you're into, I think that goes a long ways. Never had mom disappointed with that. That's my mom, anyhow.
Yeah.
Um, because I don't know, it's tough. Moms have everything. It's just the fact that you remember them on that day, and the great bodily sacrifice that they went through for 9 months, and sometimes hours, or sometimes 48 hours, depending on the birth. And then my wife, I've learned she loves flowers as well, but we're still relatively, I would say we're still relatively young in terms of how long we've been together. I
Yeah.
think we've been together for about 10 years, married for about 5. And she is very low maintenance, but she does appreciate jewelry. And she, she doesn't demand it, but I just kind of know there's a jeweler in town where we live that makes custom jewelry. And these folks have a price range. It's not like you need to go in and buy a diamond. We're not talking about that. This is Mother's Day. But if you're able to afford if you're able to afford something in the few $100 range, that might sound really high, but I think about what my wife does for our family and our children, and to get something thoughtful that she could wear, a pair of earrings or a necklace, that says so much more than I got you. Not that flowers are bad. I just think everything is so new, fresh, and immediate, and the sacrifice is so big. With we have a 1-year old and a 2-year old. It's full on every day. So that's where my head's at. I'm saying if you can afford it, go jewelry. Not, I'm not saying go to Zales or high end, but maybe find your local, I don't know, what's the right word? Um, what do you call a jeweler that isn't crazy expensive? Maybe they got bohemian stuff, or
Like artisan jeweler. Yeah.
artisan's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
I like those
What
are
about you?
classics. I mean, you went with two classics, but your intention behind it makes it very specific and unique. I like it. I just came up with this idea this year. But what about a sentimental gift like you're talking about? You are the mother of our children. That's a lot of work. But what about a sexy gift in addition? So, like the sentimental gift is from the kid to the mom, essentially, but the sexy gift is from your husband to your wife. Like, hey, I recognize that you're a mom, but you're not just a mom. You're still my lover, kind of a thing.
That sounds like a gift to yourself, David.
That's the track I'm on. Father's Day is right around the corner.
I mean, look, if your partner can fall for that or go for it, I think some ladies might see through that one and they'd be okay with it. But like, this is really so. Yeah, if it's partnered, you're just sort of like it's riding on the coattails of that awesome sentimental gift.
Um, I just got a notification from this saying that your browser doesn't allow recording. Are you doing it on Chrome?
Did with the sexy gift. Did we complete that thought? I think.
You, feel free to continue the thought if you have more thoughts on it.
No, I think we were good. I just didn't know if it was sort of like weird and abrupt ending.
No, I think you completed the thought and then I addressed the technical issue. But I do want to, one final thought on Mother's Day is your mom surfed, and we had a number of listener line calls in recent weeks about people who surf with their parents. The initial one was really funny. It was about a kid who was conflicted because his mom was regressing in her ability level, and she had become the kook in the lineup, like full on burning people without even looking. She's wearing a silly looking hat, you know, and he's like, man, this, I want to apologize for her, but I don't know what to do. So he was asking for advice, but other people chimed in and they're like, man, if you get any opportunity to surf with your parents, surf with them because it won't last forever and you should take advantage of it. So what's your relationship with your mom as it relates to surfing?
It's pretty good, but it's an unusual one because she had a spinal cord injury when we were quite young as kids. So my mom taught us how to surf mostly from the beach. So it was a little strange. So those that knew us growing up, they'd always see my mom on the beach in a beach chair. So she was surfing with us, just not physically, if that makes sense. So I feel pretty lucky, and I would say, I mean, based how quick life goes by, and I lost my father a year ago. You really start thinking about how quickly things happen in life. Go surfing with your parents, man. It's awesome. That's my call, and like, get over the embarrassment or kooky thing. I a good friend of mine is Josh Tudor, and he has two boys that rip. They're 16 and 18, or 15 and 17. And they all go on surf trips as a family, and they have a great time. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that they're like really good role models. I hope if our kids surf that we get to that. But yeah, go for it. Go surf with your parents.
What's your mom's background as a surfer? She was pretty, I mean, she was doing contests and everything, right?
Yeah, the quick version of it. Sorry for those that have heard this, but if you haven't, she grew up in Rhode Island. She and her girlfriend Phyllis, as far as they know, were the first female surfers in that area, at least that they were aware of. Early 60s. And he kind of, worked her way up, got better, got good locally. She ended up down the road on the Hobie team on the East Coast that Dick Cattree was in charge of. And I think that came when she moved down to Cocoa Beach. And so she was up and down. She did really well in the whole East Coast scene there. And then got married, had kids, sort of put surfing on hold for a bit. Got back into it in the 70s. And then, yeah, unfortunately had that injury. But the cool thing about my mom is she just, like, you talk to her, and it just feels like someone who was legitimately kind of like a legend type status. You kind of, I didn't really believe her when I was a kid. It's like, nah,
Right.
my mom probably was kind of a kook. And then later on, like photos emerge, a bunch of trophies emerged from a basement when the grandparents were kind of getting rid of stuff, and met Mike Tabling and other various East Coast folks that said things that, like, "Oh, I knew your mom," and "Oh yeah, your mom and sister were super fun." And I was like, "Whoa, let's not get too many details here, but that's good to know that she was pretty legit." But yeah, I consider, my brother and I consider ourselves definitely second generation surfers. Um, Even though she participated from the beach, but she was always part of our surf life. And to this day, and I'm 49 years old. I can't believe it. It just seems like yesterday we were on the beach learning at La Jolla Shores with my mother. She still comes to the beach and watches us surf.
Whoa,
How
that's
cool is that?
crazy. That's super cool.
Yeah. So, and it feels good, man, even at this age, to come in and your mom's psyched to kind of just be part of it and
Yeah.
watch it. And that's how she participates. And so we share that. It's really cool.
What was her name, or like her maiden name?
Adams. So first name Karen, and last name Adams.
Got it.
Yeah.
Another thing that I hear people asking about, or it's come through a few times on listener line calls and emails, is people asking like how much should they indoctrinate their kids into surfing, or should they just let the kids figure it out on their own? Or take them to the beach and let them play in the sand or push them in on boards. What was the experience for you? Was she, did you find it on your own, or was she forcing you into it?
No, she kind of forced it on us.
Did she?
Yeah, we started with boogie boards and really loved that. Super comfortable. My dad didn't really surf. He was kind of a poser in the 60s and then just like never really surfed. That's how they met at the beach. And he'd take us out. We'd goof around on boogie boards. And then there came a time I was like 7, and my mom and dad took us down the street to a guy named Floyd Smith's house, who used to be the partner of Gordon and Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And he was making these soft top boards. This is the late 70s, probably 79 or 80, something like that. And they were these soft top boards called Mason and Smith. And yeah, my mom got us excited. She's like, "You guys, it's time to graduate. It's time to surf." And we went. We didn't really love it. We were kind of crying a bit. And she just kind of told us to toughen up, And good on her. She stayed on us. And I'd say by another summer or two, other friends in the neighborhood got into it.
Yeah.
And then it became the classic story of many of us have been through, which is when your buddies get into it, you sort of puff up your chest a little bit like, no, wait a minute. I've been surfing for a few years, even though I completely sucked.
Yeah.
Could barely get to our feet. And then the rest is history from there. And my mom stayed super involved. She used to give me competition advice. Of course, I didn't listen to her, and she was completely correct on everything she said. But as a young teenager, you don't listen to your parents.
Definitely
But
not.
for any teens out there, if you have parents that are legitimate surfers, listen to them. I think they know what they're talking about.
I
To
mean,
tell
forget about surfing. Listen to your parents no matter what they're talking about. when
yeah,
they tell you that your friend is
yeah,
an a-hole and you're like, "No, that's my best friend." Or they tell you to stay away from that girl, listen to all of that.
so true, so true.
Um so this the big news story. I was trying to connect learning how to surf with this first news story that we're going to address this week, but this is kind of one of the bigger stories out of this week was Byron Bay City Council
Mm.
voted to fine surfers for not wearing leashes. Is this specifically just at the pass, or is it in all of Byron Bay?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but my understanding it was at the pass.
Yeah,
I think it'd be pretty difficult to enforce that around the whole Shire because
yeah,
there's other beaches that, you know, it, I'm just going off of, honestly, I read it through Beach Grit, and I was just there. I was just there. And the day the plane took off is when this thing went in to
okay,
effect. I read the article when I landed, and I hadn't heard anything about it other than there had been some incidents. And I don't know if this is true, but someone I've talked to in Byron Bay was claiming that the person who's like bled out or something, like didn't
I've got
die, but
I've
got.
got the news story right here.
I had heard somebody was pretty certain that the person that supposedly had nearly killed someone and the fin stabbed him in the arm and they were bleeding everywhere, that the leash was attached to the person's leg and that it was a loose board. That's sort of beside the point. I think there was a long-standing push to get safety out there because there's a couple hundred people on that point now.
Yeah.
So let's hear, what did the article say
Well,
specifically?
the article, so reported by ABC North Coast, Matthew Cassidy is the guy's name, the victim's name, who was enjoying a pleasant dip with 500 of his best friends when an unmanned longboard careened into him. Quote, "The board flew up under my arm and ripped through all of my veins and arteries. I looked down and I could see half my bicep hanging out. There was a lot of blood." The 49-year-old former professional surfer told a bystander to use his leg rope as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding, which absolutely saved his life. "Obviously, everyone should wear a leg rope," Mr. Cassidy said. "There's a whole hipster thing about not wearing one, but that doesn't hold water for me. The pass is full of kids, and I think there have been 4 incidents outside of mine in the last month. How do you look your wife in the eye if you've knocked out a kid just because you didn't want to wear a leg rope?" End quote.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on this? Is this the city council banning it and them imposing fines that are going to be levied by the authorities? What are your thoughts on all of it? Does it make sense? Is it the right thing to do? Is it not?
Oof. Man, it's a, for a lot of people, this is an easy answer. I think, on my own point of view, it's not, because I'm not a fan of bringing the law into the lineup per se. Um, I think when you look at the amount of encounters that happen on a daily basis around the globe, I don't think that this is a some sort of epidemic problem. Um, Most people use common sense and wear a leash, especially if they don't have the ability to. There are some surfers out there that are really good, and that doesn't mean they should get a hall pass because they can make a mistake. I'm one of those people. I don't wear a leash. I've had people send me really nasty messages um, about it, and I try not to engage in the argument because if you are of the it's okay to not wear a leash, there's not a really great win in the argument.
Right.
Um, because to say, well, back in my day,
Yeah.
like that doesn't really work because the numbers are different in the math. So from a logic standpoint and moral and all these sorts of things, I totally see and respect and support the argument that you should wear a leash. Um,
But you're not going to wear a leash.
no. So send the hate mail, go for it. I'm not going to wear one, but I don't I don't also buy the argument that I'm responsible for everyone's choices.
Yeah.
I think you need to do what's right for yourself. And this may not be a popular take as well, and I welcome the comments on this one. Um, I've been hurt so many times by people, and guess what? They had a leash on.
Yeah.
I have scars all up and down my body. I have my face split wide open. There's a giant scar on it. There was a leash on that. I can go on for forever. So I'm not a huge fan of this for those reasons because I don't think that wearing a leash is going to stop these things from happening. I think kooks are going to always exist. People that are learning and don't know what's going on are always going to exist. How many times have listeners here, if you think about the amount of times you've been hit by a board, how many of those times was it with someone that didn't have a leash on? I would be shocked if it was more than you can count on your hand.
Yeah. No, it's few. It'd be 30% of the time, maybe 20% of the time. The vast majority of the time is related to a leash and often your own. But that would be an interesting study to do. Like if somebody could do empirical research, everybody in the lineup wears a leash. How many injuries are there? Nobody in the lineup wears a leash. How many injuries are there? And Scott Bass actually posed that question to me. He goes, do you think there will be more injuries if everybody's out there wearing a leash at the pass now, moving forward, or less? And I was like, wow, you're absolutely right. If everybody was, let's say everybody was mandated to not wear a leash, so many more people would be spending their time swimming for their boards. So many people would be a lot more diligent about not taking off in precarious situations, which then leads to injury. It's like once you really think through the thought exercise, it you realize there would just be better surfers on more waves and a lot fewer lesser surfers on waves creating havoc in the lineup ultimately. And
Yeah.
even if they do lose their board, hopefully it doesn't hit anybody, but they're going to be spending a ton of time getting to their board and getting back in the lineup, which eliminates the crowd or it thins the crowd for a lot of the session. So I'm kind of for the argument of it's safer to not have leashes.
Wow, you are really hanging it out there, and I agree with you. but
I mean,
but
it's anecdotal. There's no way to do the actual
no,
empirical research. It's totally anecdotal. But if you've spent enough time in the lineup, you know these things to be true.
yes, I'm not you and I have spoken in the past. I'm not a huge fan of nostalgia. I do think that it sometimes is a waste of time, and I do think it's partially kind of a bit of a disease because you just get so stuck in how things were. guess what? Things change, they do.
Yeah.
However, in this case, I do think it's worth noting very quickly, and I'm sorry if you belabored this with Bass before, who has a long-standing point of view on the leash thing. Maybe his has changed. I don't know.
No, it hasn't.
But it was a rite of passage. I'm sorry. I hate to use that word. I know in our patriarchal society that we're all that stuff's bad. But there was a rite of passage, which was, it was man, or let's say humans versus nature. And this idea that you are there on the shore, you're very vulnerable. That ocean could kill you very quickly and easily. And the satisfaction, the feeling that you have of going out into that ocean and essentially battling the elements. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but like when it's legit waves, like I have so many instant memories on the North Shore, Sunset Beach specifically, no leash. It's cranking, huge, no leash. The satisfaction of getting back to shore in one piece and the completion of rides and not losing the board. I don't hunt, but I'd like to think that there's some similarities to people that go out and hunt and have one bow and and one arrow, and somehow they take down this giant animal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so difficult to do, and there's something truly satisfying with that. Now, and I'm not here to go on any kind of campaign saying people should not wear a leash. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I like the challenge of not wearing one. And at the same time, I do see why Byron would do this. But when you bring in the law, so what's next? So now we bring in the law. So you can apparently there's going to be people walking up and down. How will they enforce this? Is this just for show? Are they trying to cover their butts for lawsuits? Because I could imagine this gentleman who got hurt, which is horrible. I'm sorry to hear that he got that badly injured. Is he coming after the city? Is there pressure from,
Yeah.
we're the litigious ones in America. I didn't really see Australia as that as much, but maybe I'm completely out of touch with the culture. So where does it go from here? How do they enforce
Well,
it?
I think that, so aside from the arguments we made, you're right. That's now a new conversation, which is bringing law enforcement into the lineup is a foolish move. Like, this is the last vestige where once you leave the shoreline, this is kind of everything settles itself out here. We have a hierarchy. We have kind of rules of conduct that we all abide by. Let's leave it that way, And I really do. And I understand like certain places like the Pass, maybe Malibu, maybe there's a couple of places around the world that are very unique because they've just gotten so far overcrowded that they really do need a special set of rules. But I don't believe that law enforcement should be the one to enforce those rules. I think that is an absolute mistake from the local surfers to agree to it and to ask, to invite them in. It's just, it then becomes a slippery slope. When then they start legislating down the beach from there until ultimately all the beaches are legislated, I think it's a bad decision.
Yeah, what was the Joel Tudor quote on
Yeah.
Beach Grit? Was it, "Congratulations, Australia, you just invited parking attendants into the lineup"?
Right. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but look on the other side of this. Like, you're a parent with kids and you see a board coming in, and here I am with this sort of pro no leash wearing vibe, but I could very easily see it where a loose board nails my kid, and how pissed am I going to be? You know what I mean? So it's like,
Again, let it all sort itself out in the social hierarchy that exists in the surf world, and don't take your kids to a certain surf spot where, or don't even take them to the surf spot itself. You know what I mean? Take them to a beach or down the beach where there's lesser waves
yeah,
and they can play. Like, I think I don't want to see it have to get sorted out by a kid getting taken out and then, okay, now we learned we're going to move down the beach. But let it sort itself out. Let people have discernment and make the right decision. I think it's fine to feel that way, but it's probably unrealistic. Like, we're living in a society that's so overcrowded now that you cannot expect everybody to have common sense. You can't expect everybody to have a shared etiquette code, which we used to have in the surf world. And I think this story is just kind of a representation that no, we're way past that. And everybody lives by their own code of conduct essentially. And so we're going to run into these
Yeah.
problems.
Well, I do think that if this thing sticks, which I mean, it sounds like it did, it was voted in. If it
Yeah.
rolls out, it'll be interesting to see. Um, what's that like in the lineup? Are you going to be in the lineup and telling people like to their face? Are you going to be citizen arresting? Are you going to be snitching? Like it's going to get really
Yeah.
weird. You know, I was just at a spot in Australia and I was jumping off a rock to this break. Wasn't that crowded really, and there was a guy who was like, "Hey mate, you need to put your fucking leggy on." He got super pissed. So I mean, there are people that are ready to sort of confront this. So it's going to create a very interesting lineup.
What did you say?
He said it to me as I was in the air jumping off the rock, and I waited until he paddled up next to me, and I just said, "Hey, thanks for your concern, but I'm not going to wear one, and I'm already out here." And he's like, "Well, you better watch out," or something like that. So he proceeds to paddle past everyone, turn around to the very first wave that came to him, rolls down the windows, almost hits me, and runs over like three other people. And I said, "Case in point." I
Crazy.
like
So did you actually say anything to him at that point, or did anybody else in the lineup sound him at all?
no, because it's just I don't know.
He's just a kook.
Australia's trippy. Like the the paddle around deal is nuts. Like it I'm sorry, Australia, but I'm putting you guys at point breaks on par with Brazil. It's crazy. Like it's at a different level in Australia, and it's pretty. I guess it's pretty well accepted, but
Really?
I I don't know. I mean, that's just my observation after years of going there. That
Yeah.
it happens over and over. I mean, there's just catch a wave, go, not even a split second acknowledgement that you've just paddled around someone, just immediately go. It's just a different deal there. It was like,
Well,
whoa.
I'm I'm glad that you brought this up organically because this ties in perfectly to one of our first listener line calls of the show. But I'm going to kick it off with some intro music.
Wow.
Tools to Live By, Devon Howard. This is Tools to Live By is brought to you by the ultimate tool that you can own, which is a wristwatch. Wristwatch that will go with you anywhere. If you don't have access to a plug to charge your iPhone, let's say you're in the tropics on a surf trip, Veyer Watches, VeyerWatches.com. They make automatics, they make ones that run on battery, but they also make solar powered watches. There's a little solar cell under the dial of the watch and it powers it indefinitely. Like you can just, for the rest of your life, wear it, never have to get a battery, never have to wind it, any of it. So
God, that's great.
it's the ultimate tool.
That's great. I think I have about 9 watches in a drawer with dead batteries. So good on
Boom.
those guys.
Never run into that problem again. So Tools to Live By, the theme music, by the way, was from Home Improvement. Yeah. Okay. In case you didn't
So
know
good.
that. And Tools to Live By, listeners submit, they need life advice on something. They submit a question, a conundrum, and you and I, sometimes Chaz and I, but you and I today will provide tools for them to live by. And it's directly related to, in fact, what you just brought up. So I'm going to go ahead and play this listener line call.
Chaz and David, point for discussion. Who has the right at the peak in this situation? It's happened a few years ago at a local break. Two older guys, probably in their 60s. They were good enough on their longboards, summer, a lot of people around. One guy is a hardcore local, not aggressive, nice guy, who's lived in the area his whole life. Another guy moved to the area, some years ago, but not as long as the other guy. So the hardcore local and the other guy is taking off closer to the jetty, basically in front of the rocks. It's a fun day. It's not huge, maybe chest high. but the local guy is getting pissed at the other guy because he's saying, I've lived here all my life. But the other guy, who's not as local, is saying, well, to me, it's about who's taking off steep and deep. So if you're not sitting further down the line and taking off where it's way more critical, then you don't have the right to the peak. So who's right in this situation? Thoughts?
All right, lead us off. Residency versus being deeper.
I say respect your elders, and the guy on the inside, yes, he has a point, but he doesn't have enough awareness. He doesn't have spatial awareness. He doesn't have self-awareness to, as he's paddling, he should be able to very easily see that this older surfer, I mean, let's just say it's older based off the description, just give him the nod. You probably just had 2 or 3 in a row. You could see that the guy maybe is getting on an age and can't take off as deep as you. But it's your uncle. It's, like in Hawaii, that wouldn't fly. In lots of places in the world, that kind of behavior wouldn't fly. But it sort of goes with, like, we're a bit disposable in American culture with older people. It's really sad. I just don't see that flying in other countries, Japan, Brazil, Hawaii, where they love family and they respect elders. In Brazil, you go to any restaurant in Brazil, the older folks, senior citizens, if you will, they're allowed to just cut in line, whether you're at the pharmacy or the meat market or whatever. I think the same thing should happen in the lineup. So I think this, let's just say, new figure in the lineup needs to learn some respect if he would like to integrate himself with that community. I think he's making a big mistake.
That detail has shifted even in American culture, though, because there was more respect for the elder in the lineup. Or the detail that this caller gave was he had lived there longer. So maybe that implies that he was older as well. But whether it was either version, them having lived there longer also meant something in my youth. But the rules of priority have shifted over the last 25 years or so that I've been surfing. And so, and they've also shifted, and they're also unique, like you said, in different parts of the world. So it's very difficult now to just presume that everybody else feels the way that you do, or for us, even on the show, to just give the blanket advice, because there's a bunch of different factors at play, right?
Yes. Yeah. And look, that's why surfing is so difficult to learn. The culture is so nuanced and difficult to pick up. And that's where there's continuous conflict with new versus old. And this is one of those cases. Obviously we're not there. We're not getting the full context of it. But I do feel if this person that was on the inside, the newer, less of a resident, I guess, if you will, it seems like he could probably back off a little and just let a few go. I don't think it's a big deal. It sounds like he's getting plenty of waves. Then the sort of nativism thing is, I think, is a slippery slope, because
I do too.
Because for example, I could start surfing somewhere, and I'm known to be from a certain geographic region in the San Diego area, and people that know me or know of me know that I'm associated with that. But let's say I move to LA or San Francisco or anywhere, and I start surfing there for a few years. There will be people who say, well, you're not from here. You're not born here. And then I always get into my head thinking about, is this about zip code or behavior and decorum? So if I did move somewhere new, and to integrate myself at some of the more localized breaks, I sat inside for a year or two. Just didn't catch any set waves. I still don't. And people notice that and they appreciate it. Is that old school? Is that an antiquated way of thinking? Maybe. But I think it still matters. And I do think there are people that still think it matters.
It's interesting now that you say that, because I was saying that the rules have shifted and the rules are kind of different now in every region, but there are some core rules that if you apply them anywhere in any lineup around the world, they're recognized. There still could be a kook in that lineup who is the macho dude who's no matter what going to act like a dick. But But if you, and that's, you might encounter him on one session, but if you're there all the time through the seasons, you will kind of earn your place in that lineup.
Yeah.
That detail that you gave and a few others will garner respect.
Yeah, the Vinces of the lineup for you North Shore fans, they're the one.
You always
Yeah,
find a way.
they're the Vinces out there. They recognize that, and so I've
Yeah.
come across some of those people, and I want their respect. So there's certain things that I do, and then there will be, like you said, there are people that are just completely unreasonable locals. They give localism a bad name. And when people are trying to do the right thing, I think it needs to be rewarded and supported and acknowledged. Doesn't mean that just because you did the right thing for a year or two, you're kingpin and you get all the waves. But um,
No.
I don't know. I back to this caller though. I think this guy needs to chill out a little bit. And I love the older uncles and grandpas. I'm gonna be one. It seems like not that far. I'll be that person. So I'm trying to think, how do I want to be treated? So I'm trying to keep that in mind when I see the veterans around.
Yeah. I think the aggressive mentality that the caller explained, where trying to take off the steepest and the deepest, and thinking that that's the most important thing, and thinking that wave count is the most important thing, that is like the most common problem that I encounter in the lineup, or that I just see that like everybody has that mentality now, and it creates a lot of problems. I would love for us to encourage people just to pump the brakes a little bit. Like, you don't need to be on every single wave. It is okay to let somebody else go, even if you have quote priority, or if you think you have priority. If you see that old dude, he's been living there a long time, but you see he's just sitting in a position waiting for a given wave, and there happens to be one that's coming to him and you happen to have it first, it's okay to let it go. Give him the nod, paddle into it. He's paddling into it, give him a nod, let him go and back off. Like, it's okay to let a wave go occasionally.
And it feels good if you have the right attitude about it, you know.
Yeah,
So I wonder,
completely.
not to get buried in this because I'm sure we could go on forever and sound like a bunch of grouchy old surf salty guys, but so where is that attitude coming from? Like, I wonder where this guy is getting that notion that, because this info is coming from somewhere. So this like we're failing somewhere. Where if the main message getting through is I'm deeper, it's definitely mine, no matter what. Like there's those people. You're like, well, that's
Yeah.
not really how it works. Like you just caught one, you paddled right around me, and yeah, you were inside, but you just got a wave, and you didn't even look around. You know, like so. I wonder where they're getting this idea. Who or how? Like what thing is reinforcing that as the way? I wonder.
It's whatever was reinforcing those exact same people to buy all of the toilet paper when the pandemic hit. It's like there's a finite resource. I need mine. And you know what? I might run out. So I'm going to just get as much of it as I can, because, I mean, realistically, that's what the lineup is now. The lineup is so crowded. I can't keep track of how many waves you caught or that guy caught or where everybody is in the rotation. Screw it. I'm just going to
Yeah.
take mine. That's what's happening. I mean, that's what's happening to a degree. I think there's things that you're pointing at, which are like, social factors that are fostering
Mm.
narcissism. Social media, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff has fostered a narcissism in our youth, to where everybody just feels like they're the center of attention
Mm.
and they're entitled to whatever. And so that's
Is
happening in the
it's
lineup
the
as well.
surf line rewind syndrome?
It is. Exactly.
I just want to know who has time to go back and find. I'm sorry if anyone does that, but I there's no way I want to do that. Just go back and find, spend
I
two
know.
hours finding the like two waves. That's crazy.
Or to kick out of a wave and check your watch for the time, be like, okay, mark this down, scratch it into your wax.
Oh, I'm sorry.
check your Veyer watch, VeyerWatches.com.
Good one.
So yeah, well, we've got more segments to get to, but major shout out and appreciation and thanks to Veyer Watches for supporting the show. Use our promo code, which is SURF15 for 15% off free USA shipping, easy returns, waterproof warranty. Of course, the things are waterproof. Just for the record, Devon, company was started by two dudes, surfers, who they're young and they've kind of couldn't afford the watches that they wanted, and the watches they could afford, they didn't think were like that beautiful or whatever. So they make super durable, well-constructed watches that are also beautiful to look at and fully functional. They're assembled in America. They're the largest U.S. assembler now. So they built a really business from the ground up, basically. And within, 5 to 7 years, they're now the largest assembler in America and building incredible product. So it's a great
Good for
story.
those guys. Thank you for providing some fellow Americans some jobs. They're needed currently. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah, epic stuff. Vaer, by the way, is spelled Vaer, so VaerWatches.com. I got a couple of Kook or Curran submissions. Are you familiar with this concept?
Oh, yes, I am, and I love it. Let's do it.
Cool. And I said it wrong. It's Kook and Curran, but everybody calls it Kook or Curran, so either way works.
Real quick, if I may, before you dive into it, one of the shows you guys referenced the session. You've done this multiple times where Curran had the socks like sewn on. I swear they were stapled. They could have been sewn. I was in Mexico during those sessions, and my buddy and I got a photo with him because we couldn't believe it. It was so amazing. We're like, this is only, and we said it at the time, we're like, only Curran can do this. He's the only one who could pull it off. And he explained it. He explained how it was saving him from getting cooked in the sun, and he was like really proud of his creation. I thought he was just punking us, but he was totally into it.
Oh my gosh, this is gold. I had no idea that we had somebody that we knew that was on the ground.
Yeah. Front row.
So
I have photos. I took a photo of my buddy standing with him. I got to go find this photo. It's insane.
I would love to see it. Yeah. I looked. So after Chaz and I discussed that on the last show or two, I found the footage, and it was Brad Domke, the skimboarder, actually published the footage.
Brad was on the trip. Yeah. They were all staying at Bug's place in Punta Conejo Resort. Yep.
So Tom was riding. I remember he was riding a skimboard as well, Super Dave. But when I went back and watched the footage in that video, he's actually riding a bodyboard, finless, just like a proper bodyboard, but he's popping up to his feet and riding it. And the other detail that I did not mention to Chaz was he's wearing jeans.
Yep.
Denim jeans, which is incredible in and of itself. I mean, the least functional thing that you could wear. The thing is going to suction to your leg and not let you bend. But he's doing it, and he's doing it on a bodyboard, no less.
There's nobody like him, man. And so what do we got? You got some more submissions?
Yeah. So first of all, these submissions are now coming in weekly. I don't know if they all qualify. I'm going to let you weigh in on this. But again, for listeners who are not familiar, there's certain things in the surf world that only Curran or Kooks do. Nobody in the middle. There's no intermediate surfers that, for example, wear a rash guard over a wetsuit. So rash guard over a wetsuit is a Kook and Curran, because you got the CT pros or, contest surfers who are shredding wearing that, or a complete kook who's in a surf school learning how to surf that would be doing it. But no intermediate surfer paddles out with a rash guard over their wetsuit. So that's just one example. Here's another one that came in from a listener.
Gentlemen, good morning. Steve Klein calling in from the North Carolina coast. And I think I have a Kook and Curran for y'all. Bringing multiple boards to the beach. I've seen this phenomena at my local where it's on average 1 to 2 feet. I'll see someone with their whole quiver, foamies usually mixed in, that all kind of do the same thing on a knee-high day. So I think you're either that guy or the CT shredder planning to break a board or two working on your air game. My buddies and I have never brought more than one board to our local in the decades that I've been surfing with them. Of course, this excludes travel. Thanks for helping me get through all my old man stretches in the morning. I would die of boredom without you guys. Cheers to all the lifelong intermediates. Keep up the work.
So whether or not it's a kook and kern, it is an interesting topic of discussion. But what's your call?
I think it's a barrel or gnaw, but it's not a Kook or current.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe
good
file it away
call.
for barrel or gnaw down the road.
How many boards do you bring to the beach?
So I'm sorry, just to clarify, did he say on the sand or in the car? Is he saying like once you leave the car?
I'm thinking it's bring in the car with you to the beach is the
Oh,
way I understood it.
I always bring a log and a mid length. I always have two boards because
Me too.
like I'll take a look at Surfline, the camera, to get kind of an idea of what's going on. But do you ever find that the scale of the camera doesn't always reflect reality? And that it in fact sometimes looks a little better or bigger at certain breaks? It kind of depends what camera and what angle. And I've been duped before
Yes.
where I was like, it's I'm on a log today. It's tiny. And then I show up and go, gosh, why didn't I bring my mid length? Why that was so dumb. I had room in the car. I should have just brought it.
Yeah. I do, but I know my cameras and my local breaks so well that I know how to make that adjustment in my head for what it looks like versus what reality is. But I agree with you. I don't bring a log, but I bring late for the last couple of years a mid length and something shorter as well. I always have two boards for that exact reason.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, if you've got the space, why not? You're obviously,
yeah,
depending where you live, you're risking things. You're risking, heaven forbid, theft, or you're risking damage to the board. If it gets hot in that sucker, I just make sure if I bring an extra board, I'm always really looking around like, oh, there's a tree I could park under. Oh, look, there's a parking garage. In the summer, it can be
yeah,
kind of a problem. And then there is
yeah.
the bringing. How about, do you ever bring two board to the sand? Because that's a dicey one. I mean, there was a kook of the day recently where it looked like someone brought down a longboard, right? And someone lifted it. And I've had
Yeah.
the same thing happen at Swami's. I brought down a log and an egg, and I left the egg right there on the little perch in the rocks. And it was lifted, and just by stroke of luck, someone was taking photos of something, and it had evidence of this person. Word got out. Luckily, I got the board back because it was a pretty
Wow.
special board. But it's pretty risky bringing down two boards to assume that no one's just going to. It's so easy to pick it up and walk away, I think.
I know. And even if you're in eyesight, like if you're in the lineup looking over your shoulder to check on it, it's going to take you a long time to get to the beach. And if you're at Swami's, somebody can snag that and run up to the
Oh,
parking lot real
so
quick.
easy. But there are
Yeah.
some breaks where you have to walk in pretty far and you're not quite sure, and it doesn't have a camera. Thankfully, there's no camera at those breaks. Um, I'm bringing two boards. Mm,
Yeah.
So,
Well, by the way, that Kook of the Day post this past week, I think it was like that far north jetty in Seal Beach where that was
uh,
recorded. The security, it might have even been the Surfline cam, caught the thief on camera. So there was imagery. Instagram did its thing and everybody shared the screenshot of the guy. The guy um, identified himself. He actually DM'd somebody, maybe it was Kook of the Day, and said, "Hey, that's me. I wasn't actually stealing it. I was protecting it for for the person who I forget what the story he gave was, but it was something to that degree of like, no, they left it out in the sun and I was worried it was going to get melted or stolen or whatever it was. So I was just protect. But where can I return this to? Let me know and I'll bring it back." So the guy got his board back.
the tide was coming up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, we got one more Kook and Curran submission that I need you to weigh in on.
Guys, Kook and Curran, weird fins, because Tom Curran in videos has sawn off the end of his fins. I think in the recent Bells, whatever the Heat Against Hockey is called, he had like those wavy fins, and you see absolute kooks with those, thinking it's going to step up their game, kind of like those weird longboard fins with the circle in it. It's supposed to help you nose ride. But yeah, weird fins is a Kook and Curran thing, I think. So I'll have a discussion.
I think the ones that he's seen Curran riding are those S wing fins.
Yeah, the Zabi makes them, and he's very passionate about them. It's kind of like an inner circle of people that ride them.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely. Yeah, I mean that. I think this is a good qualifier, because you don't see a lot of people riding these fins. Um, I don't even know how a kook would even know to find those fins,
That's the
honestly.
thing. That's why this category is so hard to find one that actually fits, is because I don't know of any kook that rides kooky fins. I mean, or weird fins. I mean, the kook generally rides plastic fins, right? Like low quality, low grade plastic fins is what I see.
Yeah, and they're basically going to ride whatever the surf shop throws in there. And
Exactly.
the surf shop's going to give you the cheapest plastic fins. Years ago, the dead giveaway would be those ProTech fins, the ones that had the rubber lining on them. I don't even know if those are still around.
Right.
Um,
I don't either.
but I don't know if it's so weird that these are like, you stop to think about it, it doesn't really fit the kook.
That's what makes this category so special, is they're hard to come by.
Yeah. So look, Tom swears by those fins. So, I mean, part of it worked. I know a guy here at our work here at Channel Islands swears by them. He rides a twin pin with them. It's like, no, they're insane.
Yep.
And I have a pair sitting, I'm looking at it right here. It's right on my desk. I've got a set. And the guy's been saying, like, no, you got to try them. It's a game changer. So
yeah,
I'll get back to you on that one.
So it is a Curran move, but it's not a Kook and Curran category fit.
Yeah.
So sorry, buddy. So 0 for 2 today. 2 submissions and 2 non-approvals.
Well, maybe a listener of yours will call in with a different take. Maybe we're just missing it. Who knows?
No, we got it. I think we got it nailed. The listeners are failing us with their submissions right now. But anyways, we appreciate the submission nevertheless. Feel free to call into the listener line anytime for anything. The number is 760-237-0150. Devon, I think we should take a commercial break, and then we'll come back with one other update, and then everybody's favorite segment, which is Barrel or Not, of course.
Heck yeah. Great.
All right, Devon, we are back from commercial. Is your boy Joel still suspended? Joel Tudor? I've seen no Joel Tudor updates on his suspension from the WSL.
Man, I kicked out of there a little over a year ago. It's been a year and a few months. I spoke with Joel a few weeks ago on the phone, and I asked him this very thing, and he's like, I am still suspended. And nobody there will respond to him. He's reached out to get some clarity, and he is getting nothing. Now, I apologize if that's changed in the last week or two. I'm not aware of it. I'm pretty sure that hasn't changed. No, I had a good feeling when this went down that this is going to turn into a lifetime suspension.
Yeah. Insane.
I mean, like no path, no road to redemption at the WSL. That's it. You're like canceled forever. We're three-time world champion, and at the time was the world champion. Bye. It's just kind of silly,
It's unbelievable, and the reality is, there's nobody. We don't have any real journalistic news outlets, because this would be a huge story, But the WSL can just not address it. They can simply, effectively cancel him, suspend him with no term dictated, zero communication to him, and just bury their heads in the sand and walk the other direction. And nobody's going to call it out. Nobody's going to say anything. He's not really going to make a big fuss about it, because
he won't.
So they'll just completely ignore it, which is two things. It's the wrong thing to do. It's kind of ethically the wrong thing to do, but it's also the wrong thing to do for the business, in my mind. Joel is a phenomenal figure. He's a culture shifter. He is, whether you agree with his politics or not, leverage his sensational personality to build your business. And the fact that they are ignoring that opportunity for themselves and for their own interest is baffling to me.
Yeah, look, you guys do plenty to critique the WSL, but on this one specifically, I feel comfortable speaking to it. I just think I agree. It's a big mistake. And for what? It's a big loss for the WSL. There's a lot of history and knowledge there. And if I were there, if I had any say in it, if I was Jesse or Eric, the more boss move is that you bring your sort of enemies or perceived foes much closer and build an alliance, work out the differences, and then just redeploy in a new sort of understanding of like, okay, you know, Joel is he's a bit of a prickly kind of character, you know, that's his MO. But we need that. We need some character. We need some personality in this thing, and we need some points of view. And I think if they just leveled with him and they communicated, he can be quite reasonable. But when he doesn't have the information, you know, he's just going to start thinking X, Y, and Z. And I was thinking, well, maybe he'll start doing some posts again. But I think he's in a space in his life where there's no upside really. You know, he kind of went to the mat to get and fight for this like equality idea of longboarders and the pay. And while people may totally disagree with him, you can respect his passion that he wasn't doing it for himself. I know because I was right there when all that stuff went down. He was doing it because he's given his life to the sport, and he wanted to see equal opportunities, which is that's the WSL's platform, right? Is equality. So he was just trying to hold them to their standard. And you know, did he go about it the wrong way? That could obviously be argued. But that's sort of his brand of communication. And it is sad, you know, because he still surfs at a level where he can be very competitive with these folks. So I hope if anybody in the WSL, I don't know if they listen to your show, but if one person there can like, hey, let's start a chain of events here where we open one door to another and ultimately get Joel to the table and somehow fix this. This is so bad for everybody.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think he's too much of a liability for their ideology, that it's not in their interest to engage in that conversation at this point, you know? Like the ideology that they are servicing is more important to them than any of those other details that you just said that are related to actually surfing.
Yeah. We can move on from the WSL, but in summary, and my challenge when I worked there was that they always put the brand before the product, so there was just too much of a focus on that. And the real thing to fix and the real opportunity is get the product right, because there are so many things that are right with the WSL. I know that you guys do point out a lot of the negative, but there are some really good things. And if they could just button up those other things and just get the product right, they're so close. It's sort of like they can't get out of their own way, and they're just creating really unnecessary issues. You know, and us fans, we just want the surfing. We just want good surfers.
Totally.
We're having fun watching a guy like Zhao Qianca just go from getting booted off to being number one. I mean, that's so exciting. You know, if they could fix some of this stuff, we can focus more on great surfers like that. Why we
half of my criticisms along the way, I think, are always rooted in I want you guys to get it right for you. Like the arguments and the criticisms about the product being wrong is because you're not going to access the larger audience that you want. And also the ideology that you are espousing, you're not going to be able to share with the greatest number of people. So if you can just get the product right, then you also win. And so I'm going to criticize the product because it's not in your own best interest to continue doing what you're doing. And I happen to have unique insights into what makes the product right, because I've been here for 20 years longer than you have, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So that's all.
So, well, I know Joel's, I saw a bunch of posts. The next duct tape is coming up, I think May 10th or 12th in Brazil. And that's pretty cool, man. Like,
I know
the burgeoning scene down there, a lot of great longboard surfers. Super cool to see that go down in Brazil.
Yeah, I know. I got that email and those notices. I'm psyched on that for sure. I love that duct tape. Well, barrel or not, everybody's favorite segment of the show now has a theme song.
It's barrel. It's barrel. It's barrel. It's barrel.
It's a hard barrel.
It's barrel.
Hard barrel.
Barrel.
It's a hard barrel.
It's barrel. Or not. It's barrel.
Barrel.
It's barrel.
Barrel.
It's barrel.
Barrel.
Barrel. Barrel. Or not.
It's a straight barrel.
Do you know what what that caw is?
It sounds familiar, but I can't place it. Please remind me.
The caw is the noise that you make when you paddle for a wave and then miss it.
Okay.
You paddle, push yourself up on your chest. Ah!
Oh my God. So who did you record for that voice? Was that you or is that Chaz?
It was a listener submitted barrel or nah. Came in from a guy named Jay Martinez, and he was talking about doing that falsetto caw when you miss a wave. And it's universal. It doesn't matter what language you speak, male, female, what age, whatever. We all just do it instinctively, you know? And so Chaz and I were making fun of his caw, and he remixed it into a song for us.
Love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Barrel or Not is now brought to you by Buell, which is pretty exciting. Buell wetsuits, which I know you guys at Channel Islands have a couple of Buell team riders, don't you?
Yes. Notably Dane Reynolds. Who is there? Are there other ones?
I think Is Nat Young on the
Oh
team?
yeah, of course. Duh. Nat Young. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So Nat and Dane.
superstars.
And Dane, by the way, has his own line of wetsuits with Buell. So go to buellsurf.com. His line is called Subdivision, and great design suits. I've got the 3 mil that I've been rocking. So
Excellent. I have no affiliation with them, but I see him in the lineup a lot. A couple really close friends love them. They tell me that they like the price of them. That seems to be a selling point for them, and they're quite happy with the suits. So good for Buell.
I'm glad you say that, because even better, we can save you 25%, a quarter off the price on their website by you.
Maybe I should get one.
There you go. The promo code is BuellGrit25. So go to buellsurf.com, use BuellGrit25, and you get 25% off, which is crazy.
Wow, that's big.
That's a big discount. All right. First Barrel or Not comes from a listener that you may know, actually.
Chaz, David Lee Scales, Mark McInnes here, calling from sunny 85-degree Central Oregon. Feels like summer. I'm already over it. Curious, Barrel or Not, wearing a hat at dinner. There's that great scene in The Sopranos where Tony freaks out on the kid for wearing his hat at dinner. And the missus and I were out at a nice establishment a couple weeks ago, and there was some hooligan wearing a hat at dinner, and it just made me sick. Not like a brewery or a food truck or a pizza joint. I'm talking like a nice sit-down dinner. Barrel or Not. Curious to hear your thoughts, and hopefully you can drop some knowledge on the hat-wearing at dinner listeners out there. All right, guys. Keep up the good work. Adios.
Lead us off.
Yeah, that's a hard nah. No. I'm open. I'm totally into libertarian ideas. You do you, I do me. Leave me alone. But there's something, especially in our country. I can't speak for other countries. There is a cultural tradition to take it off the hat. Maybe that comes from the church. I don't know the origins of it, but I was raised in it, and it just feels like the right thing to do. Unless you have some reason to do that, like the table is in a blazing sun and there's no umbrella, and maybe you're bald or you have skin cancer. So I'm going with no. What about you?
I'm going absolutely nah. There's a couple of like decorum things of, traditional, like there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And I like honoring those things. I think what happened though is, it used to be a sign of, like, if you work in a field, you wear a hat. And if you work in an office, you wear a suit. And so when you go out to a fancy dinner, you wear the suit, and there'd be no reason to wear a hat unless you were, you would then be a menial laborer. That's a representation of that if you were then wearing a hat. But things flip-flopped a while ago, 15, 20 years ago, to where the richest people in the world wear cargo shorts and hats and hoodies and, sandals, the tech billionaires. And so, yeah, exactly. And so the whole culture and the whole, he's wearing a hat and sunglasses, that actually means he's a billionaire from Silicon Valley as opposed to the guy who's working in the field. So everything shifted and it's all a mess now. And I don't understand who's who and what's what. You can't basically judge a book by its cover anymore. But I like the idea of still honoring the way of the past. I like the idea of, you know, dressing respectably when you're traveling on a plane instead of wearing sweatpants and Crocs, or even worse, bare-toed, you know, bare feet with sandals.
Yeah. There's, you know, some traditions need updating for certain reasons because, you know, they're highly offensive. There are things that are real obvious, but wearing a hat, that's just such like an easy one. I don't think that's a big deal to like, unless you've got some medical condition that requires you to wear
Right.
the hat, you know?
You know what I think it is too? The reason why it's offensive is you're blocking your face, and it's respectful to other people to look them in the eye and to, you know, not try to conceal anything.
Yeah.
It feels like you're trying to be dishonest with me if you're wearing the hat and I can't see your eyes or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Especially when you, let's say you go to put the fork in your mouth, your head's down. I can't see your face at all. It's gone. So
Yeah,
that could be a problem. So,
but I love the idea of Mark McInnes stewing. He's at a fancy dinner with his wife, spending a bunch of, they're looking forward to it. They're spending money on it, and it's ruined because there's a dude over there wearing a hat. That's funny.
yeah. And I know Mark not super well, but I guess I was surprised on that take and actually pretty stoked on it. It's pretty cool.
Hey, dude, everybody gets crotchety with age. All right. Well, we're going to no barrels and PSA to any listeners out there who wear a hat when you're at a fancy dinner. Take it off.
Yeah.
Barrel. And I thought it would come up organically. You didn't address it, so now we will. But barrel or not, gifting photos of your children. This is where, like, oh, it's Mother's Day. You make a calendar of all of your kids' photos, print it at Kinko's, and give it to your mom.
What?
Here's a.
Oh, is it a call?
No, it's not a call. It's just.
So, I'm sorry. A little more context. This is for Mother's Day specifically, or gifting in any situation?
Any situation. Let's put it this way. For 10 years, the first 10 years of my niece's life, for every birthday, every holiday, every Christmas, I got something from my brother, a coffee mug with his daughter's picture on it, a calendar with his daughter's pictures on every month of the year. I'm not saying whether I liked it or not. I'm asking you, is it barrel or not to gift photos of your children?
I think it's a nah. You know, it's like, where does that thing go? I don't know. It's a weird one. It seems like if you want people to have imagery of your family or whatever, I think that's nice to provide it. I think an easier way to do that is to just send a couple prints in a card and as like, hey, here's a family update. Here's a couple photos. They're not on a mug. They're not in an expensive frame. And then, you know, if you're inclined, like, you know what, I have a wall or we have a piano or a mantle, it'd be super cool to put a photo of our family member right there. And then it's your call, right? I think it's a little presumptuous, like to think that that's going to go right up on the wall. And it's almost like you're setting yourself up for disappointment. I don't know. It's a little bit of a trap. I'm going with nah. And
I'm going with nah as well, and specifically because it's replacing the gift. Like, if you're supposed to give somebody a gift for something, whatever it is, give them the gift. Don't make it about you and your own kid. It's fine, like you said, if you want to send the photo of your kid to them on just any day of the week, go for it. But give them an actual thoughtful gift. Be sentimental and think about them. Don't be thinking about yourself and your child on their day.
Or David, this brings me back to your sexy gift with the Mother's Day gift. So the only way around this, right, is if you're gonna give the photos, give a legitimate gift as well. Like you're saying, okay, you give the ring and the lingerie. Okay, fine, you got a little bit of both. If you really want to do that, come up with something kind of rad, something that is useful.
I would like to state we had a technical difficulty at the show. We're not sure if it got sorted out yet, but I just want to state for the record, in case people didn't hear it, the sexy gift idea was for my wife, not my mother.
Correct.
It was, she's going to get a Mother's Day gift from our child and then a sexy gift from her husband. That's what that was. Okay, final barrel or gnaw coming from a listener. Let you chime in.
Hey, Grit listener line. This is Darren from Rhode Island. So my wife and I, we split up duties in the house pretty rigidly. She has the stuff she does. I do my stuff. She grocery shops. And the other day she's like, let us know what you guys need, me and the kids. And I asked her, how come we don't have cheese sticks in the house anymore? And she's like, because the kids don't eat the cheese sticks anymore. And then I was thinking like, well, I eat cheese sticks, like polio, string cheese. And then it got me thinking, should grown men be eating cheese sticks? It's kind of like kid food. It kept my kids alive for many years. But barrel or not, grown man eating cheese sticks. Let me know. Thanks, guys.
I can't believe the questions you guys are getting on this. This is amazing.
Because you know what's funny about it? I mean, I certainly don't play all of them that come through. There's a ton that don't make the cut. But what's hilarious to me is when I'm playing this call, I literally ate string cheese off my kid's tray last night for dinner. I was like, I hope he doesn't mow through that thing because I want to bite for myself. You know what? I'm not waiting. Boom, I just took a bite. I'm not going to open one on my own, but I love string cheese. It's freaking delicious.
I was as he was saying it, I was envisioning eating it with my son. I totally love string cheese, man. Like, it's a barrel. String cheese is grown, man. It's total barrel. It's fun. It brings you back to being a kid. What is wrong with that?
So do you peel a string off or do you just chomp into it?
Gosh. If I don't want to devour it right away, I think I do both. I think it depends on my mood. It's, I if I'm with my son, we do the little bits because it's really fun, for him. He gets super into it. But I've been known to do it on my own time to time. I'll admit it.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, I did not have string cheese in the house for the last 25 years of my life. It's re-entered the house this past year. Phenomenal addition to the home. It is excellent. And he nailed it too. Polly O is the best brand of mozzarella that you can buy, and ricotta, by the way.
Yeah.
Delicious stuff.
He's on point. So I'm on barrel. That's so good.
This is why people listen to us, is because who else is giving you hot string cheese talk?
What the hell does it have to do with surfing? But it has a lot to do with life.
The reality is, it's everybody who's a surfer knows exactly what we're talking about. Well, thank you, Buell, by the way. BuellSurf.com. BuellGrit25 is the promo code. Man, good enough for Dane Reynolds, good enough for me. That's all I need to know. So, and Devon Howard, is there anything else that you want to promote before we sign off? What are you working on? What's coming next with Channel Islands? All that sort of stuff.
The biggest job is raising 2 children, which we've covered, and it's the best job, the best thing ever. Let's see, the Channel Islands front. I think I would say the next thing coming up is the longboard. We've been working on a CI log, so that's this. I'm not supposed to talk about it yet. I don't know, but it's coming out in mid-June, and really excited about it. It's something we worked on. We called in our good friend Wayne Rich. I believe you've done a Surf Splendor with Wayne Rich, correct?
Yeah, years. I want to say like 2015. So long time ago.
Underground legend, very well known for his custom craft. He's won Sacred Craft twice, I think. Am I wrong there?
Sounds right.
And I think he's in it again this year. They're doing Bing this year. And yeah, super excited about that. The whole thing at CI that has been fun is, Britt reminds us all the time that we're building the best surfboards for the best surfers. So he's building boards for Zhao Xianka right now. Maddie McGilvray, Lakey, Dane, February. But he said also at the same time, we want to make the best boards for all surfers. So when it comes to a longboard, it would be a mistake to think, oh, a longboard's for a beginner or a kook. And there are certain models that certainly are, no doubt. But we went into this with a lot of excitement from the mid-length project and had people asking, when are you going to do a longboard? When are you going to do a longboard? And so our whole position on this, we want to make a board that the very best longboarders in the world would respect. Whether it's Harrison Roach or Honolulu Bloomfield or even Joel Tudor. Whether they were to ride it or not, they would put one under their arm and go, this thing's legit. So that was our goal, was to make the best, most balanced traditional longboard in the world. Not going to make any major claims, but Wayne and I think we did that. So that'll be up to other people to decide, but very excited to share that. And we're just finalizing everything right now. So it'll be out about 6 weeks.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Might be time for me to revisit a podcast chat with Wayne too.
Heck yeah. That guy, he's a treasure trove. The guy has
He really is.
Man. He is a gem, and he's really, God, he doesn't let go of the traditions, and he reminds us of things if we ever, not that we want to ever take shortcuts, but he's a staunch traditionalist with the way he builds boards, the way he makes the curves. Everything has to be original. Doesn't copy anything. I'm just like, we need more people like Wayne Rich. So
what's his take on string cheese?
Oh man, I don't know. You know what? He's also a kid inside, so I'm gonna say he's got a secret little thing for string cheese.
I can see him ordering mozzarella sticks out at dinner. You know what's even better? Fry it.
Yeah, he'll tell you. He'll describe him as being bitchin'.
All right, right on. Well, Devon, thank you for sitting in for Chaz. You're welcome back anytime, whether Chaz is here or not. But I really appreciate it. And I was gonna say, when with that barrel or not came up about wearing a hat at dinner, the first thing on my mind was like, I've never seen you in a hat once. It's because you got a glorious head of hair that you would never want to cover up with a hat.
You know, my great grandmother, who I was fortunate enough to know, she told me at a very young age, I was super young, I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old, to never wear hats, that it makes you go bald. And I'm not saying that's true, but it's just stuck with me. So I rarely wear a hat.
You know what? Party of two. And I have a really thick head of hair too that grows super fast, and you'll never find me wearing a hat. So must be true.
So
the evidence is in.
Sorry to your hat sponsors.
No hat, no leashes.
Hey, thanks for having me, and I'm glad you found Chaz. I was genuinely concerned. I thought there was going to be some sort of bad news thing, but I'm glad he surfaced and that he's okay, and that he's just sailing out there in his Nautica polo shirts and sporting those boat shoes with no socks on.
I'm going to find a photo of this trip, and then I'll share it with you, and we'll find out. We'll get to the bottom of that.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to sign off, by the way, with a listener call. This one comes in from Shukin. Shukin's a longtime listener of the show. He's calling in, chimed in. He's got a real grounded, enlightened viewpoint on everything. So I'm going to play that for the listeners. You and I don't need to comment on it because he has the final word. Great. So there's no point in saying anything, but I'll sign us off with that, and I'll see you soon, Devon.
Keep up the work. Thanks, David.
All right. Thank you.
David, Chaz, this is Shukin calling in about the Grit April 27th. I'm still watching it, and you're doing barrel or not. I'm actually going to pause it. You're talking about the homeless and giving money or giving money at the supermarket. All right, I'm with David on this one with the supermarket, because my personal feeling is they're going to collect $100,000 and then make a donation and get a huge tax deduction, where me giving it, I'm not in the economical bracket where I'll even get a discount. So that's where I feel on that one. I could be wrong. As far as the local homeless, you know, Waikiki has plenty. What I've chosen to do is adopt homeless. I don't bring them into my home. That would be way too much for me. But what I do is I find the same person each day, each week, and I give them a little bit. I recognize them by name. I ask them what they need. Do you need a blanket? You need shoes? What size, whatever. and I support them in that way. That way I develop a relationship, and I kind of think it gives them some hope. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Keep up the work, boys.